Coming in at number 7 in the rankings is Emmerdale, which probably high if it wasn't for other shows being even worsely written somehow. Because Emmerdale's writing has been pretty fucking stupid, I think. And I mean, I think anybody who watches Emmerdale and is watching this video would probably know why that is. The story of Mina, the serial killer that's been going on for a while now, just becomes more and more, or should I say, less and less realistic. But we'll get to that in a while because there's other stories going on as well. Some decent, but most I don't care about. I talked about in the last video for November for Emmerdale how the Dingle family is basically involved in so many different storylines that it gets old. I don't care about the Dingles, and there's just so many of them. Someone in the comments compared them to the NWO back in wrestling. I think it was Sean in the comments talking about how the Dingles are basically the NWO back in WCW in the late 90s in wrestling. And it's true because the NWO started off very popular. It changed wrestling. It helped usher wrestling into its most popular period ever. And I feel like when the Dingles came on board to Emmerdale, they were obviously very popular. And I think an argument could be made that they are still popular. But the fact that there's so many of them, it gets very played out by this point. And that's what happened to the NWO. The NWO grew and grew and grew until it was too big that it just became meaningless. And I feel that same way about the Dingle storylines because they become redundant. And I feel like they've gone through periods of growth, all of them, but there's no more growth to do. And some of them haven't gone through growth, even though they've been on for several decades, like Kane. I mean, I guess you could say he's grown in the past few years, but it has So anyway, Liv, who is connected to the Dingles, she's not a Dingle, but she's definitely connected to them, was arrested for Ben's murder, even though Mina was the one that killed Ben. And this is because she had that fight with it. She was drunk. Her drinking problem came back. She was drunk, like berated Ben one night, well, the night that he was murdered, but then ended up with his phone. And so that kind of pointed to her as being the main suspect in his murder. Lydia ended up turning over the evidence, which of course put a damper on Sam and Lydia's relationship. So yeah, Liv went to prison without bail. Aaron ended up leaving town because of it. So at least one Dingle leaves town, but there's still so many more and so many connected to Dingle stories. Now, with Liv being in prison, they kept touching upon her drinking problem, and she got some hooch in prison and drank way too much of the hooch and ended up sick because of that. Meanwhile, Mandy didn't want Vinny going to see Liv in prison, so that is kind of the thing that caused Liv to drink even more because she feels like unless she's alone in prison, especially after Chaz basically lit into Liv, telling her the Dingles want nothing to do with her anymore. Whatever. Kim returned to town and didn't do enough good shit for me to help the show's rankings. I believe Emmerdale fell in the rankings. I don't remember what it was. Let me look back at my notes for November if I even wrote it down. It was 6, so it fell one spot to 7. It honestly could be lower, but like I said, the writing on Days and on Young and the Restless and on Neighbors, somehow even worse than Emmerdale. So Emmerdale's lucky that it's only number 7 in my rankings because I haven't been enjoying the month of December with Emmerdale. But yeah, I was talking about Kim returning. She's basically been put in this triangle with Will and Bernice. Kim and Will have been so close. But Kim, has treated Will like shit because she treats everyone like shit. So Will had kind of been falling for Bernice, but he's been not being able to make up his mind about who he really wants. So Kim basically had to humiliate him. Anyway, I don't care about that triangle either, so another storyline not going so well on Emmerdale. Then we had more of the Al story, which has Marlin and how he's been trying to basically ruin the wool pack for the Dingle family. Uh, but Al he's working for bigger villains apparently. So he ended up having to set fire to the wool pack, blowing it up in an explosion. That was the Christmas episode cliffhanger, was the wool pack exploding. Pretty sure that's not the first time that has happened to the wool pack. So they clearly ran out of storylines and cliffhangers for the wool pack. I mean, I don't really have much more to say about that story. It's been more of the same. Al's been trying to take down the Wolfpack and the Dingles, but the Dingles were getting the upper hand on him, so I guess he had to go to this great height of exploding the Wolfpack. Now, that explosion led to Mina's storyline that I will get to, but let's try and break down even more of Mina's storyline and how utterly ridiculous it has become. I mean, I will say one of the other storylines has been Priya, who's kind of, she has PTSD from her burns with the whole fire that happened back in, I think it was October, their last stunt week for Emmerdale. That story, I mean, I guess it's okay. They've done it. That's probably been the only storyline they've done okay with, has been her like PTSD from that whole ordeal. But anyway, let's get to Mina. So Mina has been interfering with a lot of people's lives. I guess she's become this big of a villain on the show that she's able to be like a puppet master pulling strings in several different storylines. She's been causing problems for Charles and her sister Manpreet by sending fake text for Charles from his ex. But she was able to somehow blame it on Mina. I mean, Mina was able to somehow blame it on Manpreet. And that's one of the first red flags in the storyline, because why is everybody so quick to believe Mina and not Manpreet? There's no reason for this, that she could just blame Manpreet and everybody believes her and not Manpreet. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me at all. And so that's the first bad part of the storyline. And then, I mean, at least we had Noah, who found Mina's ring on the floor because Manpreet and Mina got into this argument, and some of Mina's shit ended up on the floor, and one of them, well, a lot of them were some of her trinkets that she kept from the people she murdered. So I guess they're like trying to show her as a serial killer, but it's so weak. But anyway, Noah found one of them, found a ring, and ended up giving it to Chloe. Nothing's really came of that, however, so far in December. That was like Noah's Christmas gift for Chloe. But Mina had been trying to get close to Billy, but Billy ended up ditching Mina for Dawn, so that of course pissed Mina off. So Mina had been trying to get Dawn's kid taken away from her, basically, by trying to paint Dawn as this drunk who does drugs and is not a good mother. That didn't really work out. So then we have Manpreet, who has been figuring out that Mina maybe has been lying about her past and how she was close to this woman named Nadine, and Nadine ended up committing suicide. And maybe Mina had more to do with that than meets the eye. But of course, once Manpreet's onto Mina, they're arguing outside of the wool pack. And that's when the wool pack explodes. And they're both caught outside of the explosion. Now, they're both in the same proximity to the explosion. And yet, Manpreet's the one that's more injured. And Mina basically just has these scratches on her face. So, this is where the storyline gets even more stupid than it already has been, in my opinion. So, of course, Manpreet's the one that's injured and in the hospital. Mina's the nurse. And instead of the hospital keeping Manpreet in the hospital because she was just in this explosion and she's injured and she's having a hard time walking, they just let her go with her sister Manpreet. Yeah, her sister Mina. So sure, yes, Mina's a nurse, but they're just everything in the storyline is so plot drivenly bad that it just makes the characters all look stupid. When you have to write, and this goes on in a lot of soap operas these days, but when you have to dumb down everybody to make a villain work, it's probably not working. I would think you would know that. So basically, we're getting to this point in the story where Mina has Manpreet, an injured Manpreet, and Manpreet was faking amnesia and that she didn't remember that she was on to Mina. But Mina, of course, figured that out. And so we're in for this story now, ending December. And I'm recording this before the last few episodes of the month. So whatever happens on New Year's Day or New Year's Eve episodes, I ain't seeing yet. So, and I don't know when I'm going to be posting this, probably around New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. So I don't know if this storyline is going to have like a climax or not. But what I've seen from December, I don't really care about the climax because it has all been stupid. And it's poorly written, and they write the cops stupid, and they write the hospital stupid, and they write the characters stupid, and the characters just suddenly believe Mina on everything, don't believe Manpreet on nothing. And I don't get it. And yeah, so the writing on Emmerdale has been crap, and it's at number 7 only because the shows below it, the writing is even weaker on Days and on Young and Restless and on Neighbors.